All right, Chef Harsey here with you today. We're going to make my mom's and also grandma's icebox pickle recipe. So I'm going to start with showing you the essential equipment we're going to need. So we're going to start with a good chef's knife, really whatever you feel comfortable with. We're going to use a Japanese mandolin. A lot of people like them with the guards, different elements. It's great. We're just going to go with a straight blade. I'm going to have a bowl to slice cucumbers into. We're going to have a colander to strain them off after we've had them seasoned with salt. We're going to need just a small saucepan to make the pickle brine. And I'm going to add a little kind of a chef's trick here. I've got two stainless bowls. A larger one with the outer layer is filled with ice. And then on the inside I've got a bowl, and this has been just chilling. So this is really crazy cold right now. And I'll show you how we're going to use that to kind of make this a really quick pickle. I've got 1 cup of just standard caster sugar. I've got some mustard seed, some celery seed, cider vinegar. I like an unfiltered cider vinegar that actually has the mother in it. I just think it just a much more rounded flavor. You'll get a lot better depth. You could go rice vinegar if you wanted for something a little subtle, but that wouldn't be Grandma's pickles or Mom's recipe, so we're going to stick that way. I should state the one variation I've added for the last 15 years is I added a jalapeno, just because I think it needed a little bit more balance to the recipe, and this won't add any spice for anyone who's nervous about the heat, but it just rounds out the flavor. The recipe I've sent says a red onion. I've got a yellow with me today, so that's what we're going to work with. I like to use an English cucumber instead of your standard Kirby. I think the seed structure is finer. We can shave them a lot easier on the mandolin, and it just gives a better yield. There's not so much liquid inside. We'll get a nice crunchy pickle. So let's move on to cooking. So what we're going to do is we kind of want to think about our mise en place. Mise en place is a French term. Every kitchen knows it. Everyone's got a little bit different slang of what it means, but essentially it means get it together. Get your preparation ready. So we've already assembled our ingredients, but what we want to be thinking about is, of this process, what's the quickest thing? What has time that needs to cool? And we're going to be making a brine with the sugar and the spices and the vinegar, and we're going to want to have time to allow that to cool. As I've mentioned earlier, I've got this big bowl with ice, and this is nice and chill. That's going to really help move along our chilling process. This is a very different method of pickle where we're not going to add the brine hot. I think the cold brine that will really push into that cucumber will just add this beautiful pickle, a much better depth of flavor. So I've just got my small sauce pot to add my sugar. We're going to add our celery seed, our mustard seed, and we're going to add the cider vinegar. What I'm going to do is turn back here to the stove. I'm used to working in commercial kitchens, so I'm going to get this thing ripping hot. Just let this come up to a quick boil. Once that happens, the sugar will be nicely dissolved, and from there we're going to chill it. So we'll move back to the cutting board. Recipe says 5 cucumbers. I've already done 4, but what I like to do is slice my cucumbers in half. I'll take my mandolin and I set the depth of the blade pretty fine. I like a really thin, crunchy pickle. Good to be consistent with your size. Obviously everything will then pickle a little more evenly. Most home mandolins should come with a guard. I suggest using it, and just move slow. So what we're going to do is just slice. I'll go about 10-15 slices, and what I like to do is turn, because as you'll see, the cucumber will start to shave a little bit long, and so if I want to keep them uniform, I just start to turn as I go. One trick I like to use is if you get down to the bottom and you want to get that last 3 cents out of your cucumber, is I open palm my hand. That way I can just carefully feel where I'm at. I usually won't go any deeper than that. Start working again in that mise en place. I've still got the skin on my onion, so I'll take and square up my edges. Cut it in half. And I just like to peel that outer layer off. These are great items to hang on to if you're making a court bouillon, if you're making a stock. This still has a lot of flavor, and it's something that can easily be strained out so you're not eating the paper of the onion, but it's definitely not worth throwing away. We could go this way, but I don't like the half circle rings. I think when you eat the pickle, it starts to slather on your face. It just doesn't lay right as it hits the salt. So what I like to do is slice them the long way, and then I just simply start slicing. I keep my fingers tucked underneath, looking to be as uniform as I can. Once I get to about this spot, I think this is a little clumsy. I like my fingers too much. I don't want to lose them, so I just flip my onion back down, get it to the lowest spot to the board. So what we're going to do is I've got my bowl of ice here. I'm going to come back, I'm going to grab this. As you can see, even as I pull it off the heat, we got a nice rolling boil. You can slide it around and see that it's clear. It's cooked and dissolved all that sugar. I just pour it right into that bowl that's been chilling over the ice. You'll see a lot of professional chefs. We usually have these, we call them bain-maries. They're used for several things in the kitchen, but most great chefs will have their own set of spoons they don't want anyone to touch, and all their spatulas and their little mini whisks. This is what we do in the professional kitchens to keep things moving quicker. So I'm just going to take a rubber spatula. And what I'll do is just every so often agitate it. Obviously, the more you slide it up the sides of the bowl where it's nice and ice cold, the quicker it will start to cool down. So we're going to move on to the jalapeno. What I like to do is I slice this end off. Most chilies, that's where all the majority of the heat ends up being towards the end of the chilies. And then what I do is I just slowly take my time and just try to go paper thin. And what I like to do is I just tend to toss mine around a little bit, because what you'll see is the more I toss them, I toss out all those seeds. I don't think the seeds make a huge difference, but I don't think they're exceptionally great to get that seed just right in your tooth, get it stuck in your mouth. So I like to get as many out as I can. One of the elements, as you'll see, is there was no salt into the brine. And one of the tricks I like to keep a really crunchy pickle is I'll salt my product very heavily. I think my recipe has 3 tablespoons, and really at this point you can't go wrong with too much. It's going to be very tough to get too much salt. So what we're going to do is heavily season, and I'm going to work all this stuff around. But what we're going to have happen here is this salt is going to react with all these vegetables, and they're going to start to leach out all the liquid. So what's cool about that is after this sits for maybe 10 or 20 minutes is we're going to have kind of a salty cucumber, jalapeno, onion liquid at the bottom. That'll be great because now we've let moisture out. We've made room in these pickles to accept more of the pickling liquid. So we're going to let these salt, we're going to leach out the liquid, and then we're going to rinse them really well under cold water. And I'm actually going to pat them dry so that when I add the cold brine to them, they're just going to act like a sponge, and they're just going to pull in all that pickling liquid. Cucumbers, our onions, our jalapenos, soaking in the salt. They've rested really well. And I'm just going to take ice cold water and I'm going to rinse them. This is obviously a larger recipe, but these pickles are really something you're going to fall in love with, and you can use them on anything. I've used them for 15 years as a recipe on one of the Minnesota's best burgers. We've won every award possible, and I really think these pickles are what make the difference in that. And we're just going to let them drain as much as we can. This is a little added trick I've done. You certainly don't need to do this if you don't feel it's necessary, but what I like to do is I just take a nice clean dish towel, cucumbers and jalapenos and these onions, I just pull them in corner to corner. I gently just squeeze them out. I think this really allows for a nice balanced flavor. Really lets that acid pop and that celery seed pop. But what it does is this just creates a nice sponge to take all that vinegar in. All right, so there we go. We've got our chilled brine. And while it may look like we don't have anywhere near enough brine for this amount of pickles, we do. Because even with all the salting, even with all of that rinsing and leaching out that cucumber liquid, we're still going to pull a lot of this liquid out of there. What I like to do is just really toss. You'll see that with that ratio of sugar and vinegar, it actually kind of becomes a nice little syrupy liquid, and that just really just adheres right to these pickles. I'll let them rest. You can put them in jars, you could put them in whatever container you want, and we'll just kind of let them sit. I think they're great to just let them sit and cool again if you wanted to do another bowl with ice to really chill, but I think refrigerator pickles should be just ice cold. And from this point, we'll move on to elements of other dishes, but you can use them in any way you see fit. So, Mom, Grandma's icebox pickles.